Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month will feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here is your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Heal, Thrive, Dream. Today, our guest is Melody Murray. Melody is a licensed marriage family therapist, as well as a child mental health specialist. She counsels individuals, adolescents, and families, and helps them manage emotions and behaviors likely associated with trauma, stress, shame, depression, racism, infertility, low self-esteem, and abuse in private practice. She also provides therapy in schools to students in crisis. Melody was a mental health evaluator in the emergency department at Seattle Children's Hospital for several years. Melody uses personal experiences as well as intensive training in trauma and suicidal ideation to help a multitude of populations become healthy, positive, and productive. Thank you, Melody, so much for being here today.
Thanks, Karen. I appreciate being here.
What would you like to add to your bio that you felt like I didn't cover to introduce you?
That's a broad question in that as a therapist in private practice, I've loved doing it. I've loved feeling so trusted by my clients that they have chosen me to walk their healing journey with them. And I hope that my delivery in everywhere that I am, I hope that helps demystify the therapeutic process. Like, that's what my hope is every time I have a conversation with anybody, that they go, oh, that's a therapist? Oh, she's still figuring her life out. Oh, she's not perfect. Yeah. Yes, it's important because so many people think that therapists are so perfect. And it's like, no, I'm human and I make mistakes. And, I grew up in a really, really dysfunctional home. And that is the reason why I became a therapist. Like, I went to therapy, but I was ashamed of, number one, I didn't know what therapy was forever. Didn't even know it was a thing whenever I was a kid or a teenager. And then had conversations, really important conversations in my life with people that I respected that talked about being in therapy, and was so blown away by their transparency and their confidence and their lack of, they didn't care what anybody thought about them doing this thing that was very hush hush where I come from, which is, in the South, no one talks about their personal issues. Everything is perfect. It's like social media. Everyone puts out this beautiful curated experience, but no one knows what's happening behind closed doors. And I felt that I admired their strength. And then I wanted to be that strong. I wanted to be that authentic. And so that has been, I believe, like the foundation of who I've wanted to be as a human and as a therapist, as a woman, an authentic person in every environment that I'm in.
Yeah. And I noticed that you've been on TV and lots of other podcasts. So, and I do want to hear more about that, but I'm curious about that intersection between being from the South and maybe your family's on the private side of things, maybe, and then you're wanting to be an authentic motivational speaker, therapist. How do you manage those two pieces?
It's taken time. I used to tell a joke. I think this was before it was before I was even in therapy. I used to tell this joke how I could be naked in flames running down the street, but my family would be totally fine as long as I had earrings on.
Oh, appearance.
It's appearance. How do you appear? We're going to ignore the big shit. We're just going to focus on the little things and sweep everything else under the rug. And so, I started out working in entertainment very early on in front of the camera. And then I went behind the camera in production. And then I switched over to mental health. And doing this in my late 30s, I started graduate school when I was 39 years old. And so that it's been a really interesting journey to be in the process of healing myself, helping other people heal, and then still interacting with my family members, many of whom are very far from healing. Not everybody's healing. And I think that's a misconception. A lot of people say everybody's at different levels of healing. That's not true. Some people are very content with dysfunction, very content with the status quo. And so it is difficult sometimes interacting with people that I absolutely love, but are completely fine with being in denial of the dysfunction that we've all been raised within. Like Thanksgiving was hell. And I lived on the West Coast for 20 years and just moved back to Houston, which is, I grew up in this area. And as I'm going through the day, I realized, wow, I remember why I haven't been home in over a decade for a major holiday. So there is the stigma that is still attached to mental health. And there are challenges to try to get people to move beyond how they've been taught to open themselves up to see things in a new way. It's challenging, but I feel ultimately it's worth it. And I personally decide, I create my own personal boundaries of when I'm going to dive into a court conversation and when I'm just going to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I want to respect your boundaries today, but I also know that it helps my audience when guests are vulnerable and open with some of the trauma and just the crap that you've been through. It makes them feel more relatable to you. Mm-hmm. So given both of those things, please just share what feels comfortable. But what about your dysfunctional family are you able or willing to share today? I know it can change daily.
Yeah, everything. This sounds really rough, but I've survived it all. And so it doesn't feel traumatic because I have been intentional about my healing. But everything bad that could happen to a little kid happened to me and my siblings. We were constantly homeless. We did not have food many times, and I would steal food from the grocery store. There was sexual abuse. There was emotional neglect. My mother was a substance abuser our entire lives. My mother, she shifted when she stopped actively using drugs. She just shifted to alcohol. She was still an addict. And going through all of those traumatic experiences and having certain people that you absolutely love in your family go, oh, just get over it. Oh, let it go. So being invalidated at the same time is also a level of trauma.
Yeah.
And all that comes from being dismissed. And how to trying to navigate that in your adult relationships. It's a lot to unpack. And trying to have positive relationships without even understanding that it's okay to dive into the stuff that sucks and the stuff that hurts because you're going to be better for it. But that's a hard thing to do when, as you're growing up in a household, the people that you're supposed to be able to trust the most are your family members. But if those are the people that continuously put you in danger, how can you trust other people?
Right.
It's difficult to get over that hump because you have to be vulnerable in order to get help, any kind of help. It could be, having a flat tire. You're having to, call AAA. That's a vulnerable place. And I didn't prepare my car and I didn't check my tires. I have a flat tire. I need help now. That's a hard thing to do. And the way I was raised was, appearances are everything. And so you have to act like you've got it all figured out. And part of that is not asking for help. It's not lifting the veil to other people and saying, I don't know what I'm doing. Or I feel like shit and I don't know how to get out of it. I don't know how to fix this. And so I feel like I am one of the chosen people in my family. Like I try to reframe everything to put a positive spin on it. And that's what I feel like if it's me that is doing this, and I actually have nieces and my little sister that are working on themselves, which I think is fantastic. Like we are very intentional about breaking generational curses. Our family has so many. And the only way we're going to, make sure that the future is better is if we're, in full authenticity today. And so I've had personal conversations with my nieces and nephews. I'm one of four. My older brother and my older sister have children, and they haven't been the best parents to them. And so it's flying the plane while you're learning how to fly the plane. I think that's the best way I can describe it, where I'm actively trying to heal myself, but I'm still trying to help heal other people at the same time.
That's perfectly said, actually. Yeah. And what on your healing journey has been the most helpful pieces to the healing, whether that's books or therapy or self-care work? What's been most helpful to you?
All of the above, but I think the very first part of it was acknowledging something was wrong. That was the first step, is going, I don't feel so great. That was a big thing. That took me years to do. And I had just started a brand new job, and I was at lunch with my brand new coworkers. And one of my coworkers, who is now she is my best friend. But that day at this lunch where I was meeting her for the first time, she mentioned something. And in an offhanded, comment, she made, "Oh, my therapist." And I thought, what?
She said that out loud?
What? She said that out loud? And then one of our other coworkers said, and I thought, oh, she's wanting to do therapy. And then I was like, can you? And I wrote it down. And so I started going to therapy. But my first session with him, his name is John Elliott, and he's in the Valley in the Los Angeles area, and he's just brilliant. Our first session was, I need to know your shit, because you can't help me with my shit if I don't know your shit. If you don't have any shit, you can't help me. And he understood where I was coming from. It had nothing to do with him. Mm-hmm. It was all about me and my stuff, and feeling like trauma was this thing you needed to achieve in order to be able to relate to people. And he had trauma, which I believe like 99% of all therapists do. Mm-hmm. And we have learned how to heal ourselves. And now we want to teach other people how to do it.
Right.
We want everybody to feel good. And so I think that whenever we have those types of conversations with people that are hesitant to go into therapy, that is an important thing for people to hear, is that I came from crap. I'm not in this place from a space of superiority. I am a healed person. I am an actively healing person. Yeah, I'm actively healing. And these are the things that I've triumphed over. And I can teach you some ways that you can feel comfortable diving into this too. So therapy was a huge part of it. That was the beginning of it. And then I started taking classes. And then heavily over the last, let's say, 5 years, I've been reading, and allowing myself to be uncomfortable in different situations, in different conversations, pushing myself to think differently, because I want to grow. I want to learn. I want to be the smartest me I can be. And that means that I have to open myself up to be challenged. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And we talked a little before the recording about the amazing power of books. Are you going to share your favorites with us? Or the last two you read, like however you want to do it.
I have so many books, Karen. I don't know if we have enough time. So whenever I start therapy with my clients, depending on what they're coming to me for, I set them up with different books. I have tons of books that I recommend to people, but when the first book that hit me like a ton of bricks, that moved me and helped me feel validated, was a book that was written by a therapist for other therapists. And then therapists started reading it, and it moved them personally. Then they started referring it to their clients. It's by Alice Miller, and it's called The Drama of the Gifted Child. Yep. It's a tiny little book that has a huge impact. It's like a punch between the eyes, because it tells us about all the survival skills that are developed when we're in the home of a narcissistic parent. And it normalizes that space where I grew up for a long time thinking that I was the only person who was in hell, in dysfunction. And that helped me realize that no, I'm not alone in this. That was a big one. The Drama of the Gifted Child. A book that I finished last year that also had a major impact in who I am and in my work is Running on Empty. Running on Empty by Dr. Johnny's Webb. Running on Empty is a book that focuses on childhood emotional neglect. Because I found in my clientele, I primarily work with adults, high-functioning adults that realize something's up, but they can't quite pinpoint what it is. They've got successful careers, they're married, they have children, they have homes, they've got money in the bank, but still something's wrong. And it's typically anxiety. That's what the presenting issue is, anxiety. But then we all know that anxiety and depression go hand in hand. And so I will talk to my clients about how they grew up and who were their parents when they were raising them as children. And so this book, Running on Empty, teaches people about the symptoms that they have coming from a household where they weren't emotionally fed.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Really good. It's super helpful. Another one, which is pretty fantastic, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Yeah.
It's the gold standard.
Yeah.
Taming Your Outer Child is a big one. It's by Susan Anderson. Taming Your Outer Child it's a book about looking for all those things that we are currently doing and tracing them back to our inner child, the work that we need to do with our inner child, all those things that we weren't fed as little kids, how it's coming out, gambling, sex addiction, it's, all the ictions and how we're relating to our partners and our children, but most importantly, how we're relating to ourselves and how to tame that. All those outward things that we're doing that's meant to soothe this inner child, but it's doing the opposite of that.
You're doing a great job with this list of books.
I am in this. I'm so into books right now. Here's another one that I'm reading that I think it's about men, but extremely helpful for women to read. It's about there's two different books, and they talk about how men are raised geared towards violence, and then the depression that men feel that they don't even realize that they're feeling. And I feel like it's important for women to read these books because women are in relationship with men, not all, obviously, but many. And if you're having children, there's a 50% chance that you're going to have a boy. And so to be really, really honest with yourself about the messages that they're receiving in the community and what you are passing on to them and how it's helpful or unhelpful and unhealthy. One is it's by Bell Hooks. It's called The Will to Change: Men, Masculinity, and Love.
I didn't know she wrote that.
Oh, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And what's so amazing about it is it talks about how if women are expecting men to get their shit together, it's like the blind leading the blind. It's not going to happen. Where men are right now they're working at a snail's pace when it comes to healing and getting their shit together. But I do see that there is movement happening, but it's happening very slowly. And if, women who consider themselves feminists expect men to cross over into this new enlightened place alone, it's not going to happen. We have to work in conjunction with each other because we all affect each other.
Right.
Another one by Dr. Terrence Real, who is an expert in relational trauma. His book is called I Don't Want to Talk About It.
Oh, yeah, I've read that one.
Oh, it's so good. And it's about male depression and how all the ways that male depression comes out overtly and covertly. And that's the book that I'm currently reading right now. Everything else I've finished. I'm currently in that book right now. And it's mind-blowing. And it's giving me a sense of hope where I didn't expect it to, but it's giving me a sense of hope in that we are moving in the right direction. It's not as fast as everybody would want it to be, but we are moving in the right direction. But we have to be honest with what we see. And you know, workaholism is a form of addiction, but yet it's something that we've accepted as okay. But it's another way to put out these inner fires that are, you know, based in emotional neglect and physical abuse in childhood. And then it allows you to infer about the mass shootings that happen. Like, men are put in this box where you can be the class clown, you can be sexy hunky, or you're angry. And that's pretty much it. It's fascinating to just allow your brain to twist and see things in a new way.
Yeah, that perceptual shifting.
Exactly. Which is like my favorite thing in the world.
It's
helping
so
people
powerful.
see things in new ways and go, huh.
Yeah, now you see the light bulbs hitting their brain.
Isn't it the best?
I said light bulbs. I think I meant lightning flashes.
I gotcha. Yeah. I was picking up what you were throwing down.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, now I want to hear about your book. How many books have you written? First of all,
this is my first, but it's not the first I've started, but it's the first that's going to be released. I've got 3 others on deck.
Ooh.
It's called Mourning the Living. And typically we associate mourning with someone who is deceased, someone who passes away. But this book was born out of personal relationship, my relationship with my older sister, who's gone the path of our mother. She has become a drug addict. She has abandoned her children. And when we were children, she was my protector. She was my favorite person. She was practically my mother, but she was only 3 years older than me. And I had to, in these last 10 years or so, adjust my expectations and my view of her and our relationship together to accommodate this new phase of who she is, which was so far away from where she began. And I understand it's so incredibly painful. And so I've had to mourn my sister. I've had to mourn who we used to be, who she used to be. I've had to adjust my expectations of who she is as a mother, as a sister. I've had to let so many things go, but I've had to allow myself to have the emotional experience of being angry, of being sad, of being disappointed, of being frustrated, and then ultimately shifting into radical acceptance so that I'm not constantly feeling all those things all the time.
How did you do that?
Oh, girl.
Do we have to read the book?
Read the book. Well, here's what's so great about the book, because the book isn't just about that story. What I decided to do is, as I was having conversations with my clients are all mourning different relationships, because as I'm working with them, they're talking about their mother and their fathers and how they were raised and what emotional states were their parents in as they were being raised, which is important whenever you've got multiple siblings in a house and like, how am I so different from my brother and my sister? When that's in large part connected to who were your parents when they were raising you? Were they in love? Were they happy? Were they financially stable? Were they struggling? Did they come from homes of abuse? Did they just pass on everything they learned, however maladaptive, did they pass that on to you? So each chapter is a different relationship dynamic. It's mothers, fathers, partners, friends, siblings. There's a chapter on personal identity where each chapter is then broken up into, here are personal stories of people that I know or that I've or people who just sent stories my way. And then there are the stories of my connection with my clients and me helping them mourn their relationships. But it's mourning, but it's also helping people create boundaries, shift expectations, and sever ties if necessary. Because just because someone has had a time in your life for a while does not mean that they own that space forever.
Right.
So in some of these dynamics, they've had to cut the cord and just be done. And how do you do that? So I teach people how to have those conversations with themselves first. How do they let go of any kind of personal judgment, any personal criticism, because they're considering ending a relationship. Because mourning, you can mourn someone that lives down the street from you. I've got a client whose mom lives 10 minutes away and they haven't seen each other in years. And that's the hardest part, because you think of all what could have been, and you also think about what should have been. And is it my job to extend the olive branch, or is it up to them? They're the older adult. They're the parent. Why aren't they getting their shit together? Mm-hmm. So the book is teaching, it's showing all the different stories, because I think it's important to normalize family estrangement, which is growing when you consider the political climate. Family estrangement is it's exploding, and people aren't really talking about it. But it also talks about why it's hard to set boundaries with the people that are closest to us. It talks about self-care, which is one of the things that I impress on all of my new clients in the very beginning. You have to take care of yourself, and you have to have healthy ways of taking care of yourself as you do this work, because you're going to be triggered.
Yeah. And it'll crush you if you don't have a plan in place. Yeah.
Exactly. So it talks about boundary setting, trauma bonding. So whenever it comes to partner relationships, if you find that you're dating the exact same person over and over and over again, they just have a new name, what is it that is binding you to these types of people? And just, steps on how do you mourn someone that is still here. And that's the title of the book, Mourning the Living, when the loved one you've lost is still here.
The title is genius, because
thank you.
So many survivors and thrivers are going to relate to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Family dynamics, I think, we have a tendency to feel so guilty if things aren't smooth, and internalize things that have been in a family pattern, generational patterns. So, talking people through how to own what is yours, but also release what isn't, and forgive when you can, so that you can move on, but correct mistakes, so that if you decide to parent, then you're not doing the same things that were done to you. But as you're in a relationship with other people, creating personal boundaries so that you don't feel like a doormat as you're interacting with people.
Yeah. Okay, so suicide ideation is the other thing that you have some expertise in. And same, I've worked in ERs for years, mostly military, but not all military. I've done some civil public hospital settings, ERs, where the clientele is quite different than the military sometimes. How has working with people so desperate that they may want to die or have attempted to take their life, how has that impacted the work that you're doing?
It's made me so much more compassionate towards people. It has helped me see it in my own friendships and in my family members, which I did not expect. It's also very humbling to be with a person and their families when they're at their worst moment, when they're at their crisis state, and wanting to offer them some stability and some information, something that they can hold on to that can ground them. Because when you're in that state of, this person I love so much wants to go away, doesn't want to be here anymore, that can send you spinning. And so I can understand the family that's there to support, and all the emotions that come up from that. There's a lot of anger that comes from that, which is surprising. You would assume that it would be all empathic or empathetic, where it's like, I care for you and I'm so sorry you feel this way. But there's a lot of anger, like, what the hell do you have to be depressed about?
Yes. Yeah.
Who the hell are you to try to kill yourself? It's fascinating.
It's but then so selfish.
Yes. And then, working with people that have decided they don't want to be here anymore. And with certain people going, I've had those conversations with teenagers, children, and they talk to me about their life experiences. And I go, I get it. I totally get it. And that's a surprising thing for people to hear a therapist say.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to be as non-judgmental as I possibly can, but I want to be respectful of where someone is at any particular time. And you've had a buildup of things that haven't gone your way. So I totally understand why you don't want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
But I consider it escape. It's very, very real. I did an assessment on a 15-year-old girl who was so anxious. I mean, just trauma from the moment she was born, and was so anxious. Her head was shaved because she had been pulling her hair out. And I always forget how to say this.
I can't say it either.
Trichinosis. It starts with the TRI. That's all I can remember.
Yeah, but I know what you mean.
Yes, we know. It's TRI something, with multiple syllables. And she shaved her head because she'd been picking her hair so much that she had bald spots, and she shaved her head to make it less obvious. And in that moment, I remember my older sister. She used to do the same thing. When she was a teenager, she had a ring about probably 4 inches in diameter of a part of her head that she used to pick her head. And being in that moment with this young girl, and then thinking of my sister at the exact same age, like that throws you for a loop. And
triggers you on the spot. Yeah.
Whoa. And it's like, you have to put your own personal stuff aside, because I'm not here for me right now. I'm here for you. Mm-hmm. And so being with the kiddo and interacting with them in a place of non-judgment is extremely important. And then also not being afraid of the topic, and being able to have a conversation about it. I remember I had a 17-year-old client that had made multiple suicide attempts. And she eventually, we were in therapy together for a couple of years, and she eventually graduated out of therapy. She kicked serious butt in therapy. And along the way, I asked her a question. I said, what do you wish your mother knew about this journey that you have, where you want to end your life sometimes? She goes, I wish I could tell her, when she asks me how I'm doing and I tell her I'm feeling suicidal, I wish she wouldn't automatically freak out and call 911.
Right.
Be open to the conversation. And it's important, and it's okay to lean on the professionals. But just like whether it's basketball or math or a new relationship, you catch up to wherever your kid is so that you can meet them where they are, so you can have a conversation. This is no different. And I fear that we've talked about it so little, and it's not just suicide, it's death as a whole. We talk about it so little that we don't talk about it at all. So when it happens, people feel alone. People feel isolated in it because everybody runs in the opposite direction because they're so uncomfortable. And nobody talks about it. And that's what she wanted to impart. If this is happening with your child, if this is happening with anybody, talk about it. Because the more we do anything, the more comfortable we get at that level in that type of conversation. And I think a damaging thing that I've noticed in the last couple of years is, as I have promoted this is the work that I do amongst my personal friends, them coming towards me, asking me for advice for themselves or for their friends or family members, and hearing about people that we know in common, or just people within their lives that they've gone to, because people will put on social media, if you need help, you can call me. And then when somebody needs help and they call that person and they freeze up and they shut down.
Not helpful.
It's not helpful. Don't put yourself in that position when you know you're not comfortable being that person. Don't say that you are.
I know.
It's the worst, because then that's another slam in this person's life when they're already so low.
Yeah.
So,
and not really appropriate either. If you're not trained in suicide, don't offer to be that support. If you will help somebody by giving them a hot meal that doesn't have food, say that there's other ways to be helpful in giving to people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And again, you don't have to be the expert in things that you're not the expert in. Mm-hmm. Have a list of crisis numbers. If you want to give something, say, text this number, call this number. This is a 24-hour crisis line. These people can help you. and feel that, you've helped in that way, but you don't shut down completely, because you've already opened the door and it's put up or shut up time.
Right.
So, just own your limitations so that people who are in their worst moment don't come to you and then they get shut down by you.
Right. Perfectly said. Yeah. So other than your book and then your therapy practice, are you able to help clients that live in a different state than you are? Or do you just have local, or do you have courses?
No, what I'm actually in the process of doing is creating online courses. And a few have been created already, but the one that I'm focusing on more specifically now is the one about like suicide assessment. Mm-hmm. It's just information that people can access so that they can, if they suspect something, they know what to say, what not to say, and what to do. Now, again, this is not putting you in the space of an expert, not at all. But so many times when people take their lives, the people around them go, I had no idea. I had no idea that they were struggling. I had no idea. So to understand the risk factors is important. To understand, the different symptoms and the signs is also important, so that it can get your spidey sense going, so that you can try to connect the person that you feel is struggling with someone who is an expert in that space. So the course talks about signs, symptoms, risk factors. And then also, if you call 911, this is what's going to happen. If you bring someone to in hospital emergency room, this is what the assessment looks like. Safety plans. What does inpatient hospitalization look like? What occurs? Because it's very different than what people think it is. People think that it's this magic pill and people are going in and they're going to be all fixed up. No, it's stabilization.
For a couple
it's days. Not real treatment. It's stabilization. And that is so scary for a lot of people to realize when they expect a big something. And no, it's in large part a Band-Aid. Unfortunately, because our society is still in that space where we're not taking mental illness seriously.
Well, it's a money thing too, right? It's insurance. Yeah.
Yep. We're more likely to throw money behind widgets than we are, people, and preventative care blows my mind. It pisses me off.
As it should, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, well, anyone that's interested in knowing you further, taking your courses, how do they reach out to you? What's the best way?
Sure. My handle is the same on Facebook and on Instagram. And my website, it's the exact same thing. It's Melody, LMFT. Melody is melody like music. So MELODY LMFT. Which stands for Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist, melodylmft.com. And I have different things posted on my website. My bio's on my website. I've done TV appearances. I've got some links to those and articles that have been done there as well. And my courses are there. My book will be there for purchase. It should be out this spring. I'm aiming for a Valentine's Day release because it's about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. Please reach out. I appreciate that. And whatever help I can give, that would be great. I'm licensed in the state of Washington. So the one-on-one work I do is with those clients specifically, but I am in the process of getting licensed in California and Texas as well.
Good. You can help a lot more people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I was trying to hold that in, but it had to happen. Melody, I'm really appreciative of your time with our guests today. I think you have a lot to offer, like both personally and professionally. The combination is just beautiful. And again, I love the name of your book. I am eager to get my hands on it. And once it's published, please let us know so we can hyperlink it so people can purchase it from your podcast episode.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really awesome, Karen. I will do. I will reach out. And I would love to do this again. So if you ever want me to come back, let me know. I'll be here for you. This was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.